I just want to put this away.
Oh yeah, come on, bring it on in.
Didn't know you were.
That's a great vacuum, actually. I've got that vacuum.
Two locker rooms.
It works, yeah.
You're not selling vacuums today, right?
I'm not selling vacuums today, no. If I was, it would be a Kirby, because they're the best.
And here we go.
How do I know that? Because I sat through a Kirby presentation, interrupted, this is no joke, Al Fuller and I were playing Super Tecmo Bowl, if you remember that game, which we obviously had the Raiders, which had Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson on the team, and we were playing Super Tecmo Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Next thing you know, we get a knock at the door. We were both living in Continental North Trailer Park at the time. You know, our meager beginnings, right? As young 20-year-old married dudes. And the knock at the door comes, and the guy says, yes, Tanya set up the presentation. And we're like, this is Al's wife. We're like, okay, you know. John, jump right up in here, yeah. This guy would not leave. Now he did, I don't remember if he picked up a bowling ball or not, but man, he was picking up like steel things in the carpet, right? He was like, oh, get out your vacuum cleaner, and he was talking about the steel bearings and the mechanical makeup of the Kirby, and it was, you know, the best, really. But it was $2,000 at the time. I mean, it's gonna be the only vacuum anybody ever owns, right? In a family for, you'll pass it along to your children's, grandchildren's children. And we were like, we just started laughing. We were like, we don't have $2,000. We're playing Super Tecmo Bowl, man. Now, we both worked at Pepsi. We had pretty good jobs, but we were living in a trailer. I mean, you don't show up to a trailer to sell a Kirby. You know, you need to stop by. And apparently, the middle class women in the suburbs have a hard time with Trump, but that's who you need to be selling Kirby's to, not the guys in the trailer park playing Super Tecmo Bowl. All right, that's enough for my story. Thank you. John, good to see you, buddy. John Martinez, the last guy in, but we're going to get started. We might be joined by some other people, but thank you for spending your time here. We really appreciate it. It's the most valuable asset we have. And for those of us that get a little bit older, you realize that. You realize, wow, look at all that time I wasted on this, or this. Let's make sure each one of us lives that life that is, it's exemplary when it comes to how we're spending our time. Not to say that you can't chill out and play some Super Tecmo Bowl, but when I look back on it, man, I wasted a lot of time playing video games younger, and it wasn't even that good. The kids nowadays, I mean, I started out with Pong. You remember Pong?
Yes.
Okay. And you want to know what the great thing about Pong was for my parents? My two brothers and I, it keeps score for you so you can stop arguing about who's winning. Because that used to be one of the biggest things was, no, it's 10-9. I'm winning. No, it's 9-9. You're not winning, right? That was always the big thing, right? Playing basketball or whatever. So, thank you for spending your time with us. There's a couple things I want to get through. Obviously, networking is very important, and we need to be able to do that. I want to remind you of a couple of things. The back side of that table are older articles. The front side are the newer articles. We're killing trees over there, and I'm hoping it's for a good reason. If I find an article that I think is very, very important for us to read, I bring it in and share it. Now, some of us, you know, quote unquote, save trees, and we share emails, we share texts, and those are all positive things too. But how many of us really appreciate being able to hold the piece of paper still to this day? And one of the things I do get is the Epoch Times, and I'm telling you, that stuff, you might say it's a conspiracy theory today, but 2 weeks from now, when even mainstream media is forced to be able to talk about something, because, wow, this just isn't going away. A lot of times, it's already been broke by either Judicial Watch or Epoch Times, because there's actually people going out there and doing real investigative journalists and investigation, period. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I'll try to be as brief and as efficient as possible, but you know how it goes. It's difficult for me to not fall down into some little rabbit hole here and there. There's so many things that I've wanted to say both online and when we're here and individually. We got a little bit of it earlier today. My lawn guy and I talked, and I got a chance to share some stuff, just historic perspective on how we got here today. So we're going to do a little bit of an experiment. This is live right now. Well, I'm taping it, I guess, on the YouTube channel for James Detroit. Current events, historical perspective, in an attempt to see if this thing goes through. Because what is one of the things that we see more and more and more of is a deliberate censorship by big tech to control the conversations that each one of us has. What is the First Amendment? What is one aspect of the First Amendment? Freedom of speech. Freedom to be able to share ideas. Now, you might think this is a little bit crazy, but I remember watching Phil Donahue, as, in the 80s, and he talked about the importance of being able to, he interviewed white supremacists, he interviewed, black extreme Muslims, he interviewed everything in between, right? And why did he do it? And I remember Phil saying, I think it's important to shed light and to give a platform for people, because if their ideas are idiotic and hurtful and mean, we want to show that so people can make their own decisions. It used to be that I don't care what it is you want to say, I might not agree with it, but I would die to defend your right to say it, because I would want you to die to defend my right to say it. It's the First Amendment for a reason. Now, there's also other aspects to the First Amendment, but that is such a big challenge for us right now. So we're going to try to see if everything I talk about today is able to be uploaded or not. You are my witnesses that what we are sharing today, whether or not it gets uploaded through one aspect of Google, which is YouTube channel. So the ability for us to also be able to share that, because you were here, and to see if we can continue to share ideas such as these. One other aspect to our freedoms and our liberties is control, having the ability to be able to make decisions for our own bodies. What goes into my body is my decision. For the most part, still today. What are we on the precipice of? Mandatory vaccinations for a pathogen, a legitimate respiratory pathogen that is killing people in the United States, average age of 78. What's the average death age in the United States without the pathogen? 78. If you believe in the law of large numbers, you really have to look at this. Forget about all of the stuff. And nobody was more day-to-day talking about this stuff than Andrew and I, almost every single day talking about the things. And what do we know today is much different than what we were being told and we thought we knew 7 months ago. But what we have lived and experienced, the reality is that there's not one single significant, legitimate study that shows that masks provide any true benefit. If you could completely control the air you breathe, then it would be potential. But we're wearing masks because it's a small adjustment we're willing to make. It's a small freedom we're willing to give up in an attempt to I'm just compromising. It's a slippery slope that we all are on right now. I truly believe that. Because if we look at from a law of large numbers and the deaths per 1,000, deaths per 10,000, I ask the same question today. Are they dividing up the landmass formerly known as Sweden between Finland and Norway because everybody's dead? No. They have not killed their economy. And most people will point to the Scandinavian countries and say, that's what we need. We need socialist economies. those economies are not socialist in the sense that Marx wrote about. They are based off of what can we pay for. It is a capitalist principle at its core, and then they have higher taxes and they have other things that provide, but it's only after they're able to pay for it. These people aren't stupid up there. They just decide differently. We, on the other hand, crony capitalism has taken over so much of our government that we print money to pay for all the crap, and everybody, I'm pretty sure everyone in this room would consider themselves a middle-class American. People that have worked their entire lives, did not get anything handed to them, and we have all been pursuing our happiness. Not a guarantee, it's the pursuit of our happiness. And our pursuit of our happiness has been hurt. It's been damaged through crony capitalism. The debate last night, if you watched it, the breaking news from Bublinsky before that, you can see where there's two men. When Joe Biden says the character of this nation is on the ballot, well, then you lost. Because your character, 47 years of proven, and Schweitzer wrote the book 3 years ago about the Biden Five and the crime family that it is. But we were all told that that's been debunked. We were all told that all of that was lies. And now you have a real witness with real cell phones for over a period of all these years with the text, with the data. What we're being told is that that's all Russia disinformation, and that Giuliani and Trump and now Bublinsky, who has only contributed to Democratic campaigns his life, he's been served our nation through the Navy with, it was a competent service, right? He didn't get dishonorably discharged or anything. They are going to ruin this man's life. They are going to tell you that he's a child rapist. They're going to tell you that he's beat women. They're going to tell you that he's, involved. This guy has signed up for a lot of headache. And so have each and every one of us that supports the President of the United States, because one of the next things is a Truth and Reconciliation Department through our bureaucracy that is going to be unfolded if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win the election. Truth and reconciliation comes from where? Maoist China was the greatest example of that. That's whereby everybody in this room, because you were a part of this meeting, you will then be brought in front of a large group of people, even beat with sticks, until you admit that you needed to be cleansed of your wrongdoings because you wanted to think for yourself. That's the kind of stuff that went on in Maoist China during the Cultural Revolution. Mao was he's only credited with killing somewhere around 50 to 65 million of his own people. Nobody really knows. Stalin killed somewhere around 30 to 35 million of his own people. These are socialist dictators, and Lenin's favorite phrase ends up being, the goal of socialism has always been communism. So let's not think for 1 second that where our country is on the precipice of potentially would fall into socialist agendas. Why is that important? Because when I talk about freedom of speech, when I talk about freedom of what goes into our own bodies, and to be able to make a choice, I don't want to be vaccinated. Right now, if you are growing up in the Amish community, you can say, no, I don't want to. You still live in the state of Michigan. You still go shop at the same stores that we do, but you haven't had to vaccinate your kids or yourself. How come those people aren't all dead? The truth about vaccinations is, and you can look this up, you can Google it, they'll tell you I'm lying, and the fact that I even talk against mandatory vaccinations might keep this from going to be shared. But I'm going to share it with you anyway, as my witnesses, as to whether or not we get a chance to share what we're talking about here today. And that is, Poverty kills. Poverty. Clean water, healthy food led to the elimination of more diseases worldwide than vaccinations over a larger period of time. When people say, well, what about smallpox? What about polio? If you look at the numbers with healthy water and food, polio, smallpox, other things that are mandatory, we're coming down drastically. Drastically. Now, we've gone from, in the 70s, a handful of vaccinations to try to help our children grow, to dozens more. Why does a baby at birth need the hepatitis B vaccination? Can anybody tell me that? Why would we put the hepatitis B strain into a baby? And the largest polio outbreak right now in the world is vaccination driven through the Gates Foundation. India's kicked them out. Other countries in Africa have kicked them out. You see what happened in Brazil just recently. They're telling the CCP, the China, we don't want to be guinea pigs anymore for your COVID-19 vaccinations. I'm telling you that we are on the verge of some very challenging times, and I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm saying there's a lot of information out there. Not all of it can be shared. Why do you think that the censorship took place when credible doctors, if this room was filled with doctors right now, and you said back in April or May, why am I being encouraged to fill out the paperwork so that it's a COVID situation? You remember that, doctors? Remember those guys? They weren't nuts. Why are they censored? Why is the NYU doctor walking out of the ICU, doing his own YouTube and saying, we're killing these people with the ventilators? This is a respiratory ailment. The pathogen attacks the respiratory system. Inflammation is a big aspect of this. We're flooding them with the oxygen. We're drowning them. We need to stop here. Why was that guy censored? Why can't you find these videos anymore? Because it doesn't fit the narrative of a larger narrative. The narrative being anything. Trump deranged syndrome is so real, anything. We will kill people to keep this man from getting another 4 years. And what is at stake? Well, obviously, there's people that are upset that, hey, he said when he ran in 2016, he's going to lock her up. How come Clinton's not even been, prosecuted here? Okay, these things take time. And the fact that Donald Trump's even still alive is amazing to me. But if you think for 1 second that the guys that you saw last night couldn't be more different on that debate stage, if you think for 1 second they couldn't be, well, it's impossible. Donald Trump stands for America first. He's a patriot. And I believe that Joe Biden wins the nomination because he's willing to step aside at some point. He's willing. Why has Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and AOC not been critical of Joe Biden? The same woman that now is his vice presidential candidate was very critical of him on all these points. And she believed the women. Now she doesn't. It's whatever allows for the power. Abraham Lincoln is famous for saying, almost every man is able to stand against adversity. But you want to see the true character of a man? You give him power. What the Democrats have displayed over the last 60 years is that they need that power. I believe that's why they killed both Kennedys, because they needed the power. This isn't the same Democratic Party of John or Bobby Kennedy, not even close. This isn't the same Democratic Party of my grandfather, who was a forever Democrat. That's why I grew up one. Eisenhower warned us about the industrial military complex and the unelected people, which has only grown exponentially since he left office in 1960. The people, now President Trump just recently signed an executive order minimizing and reclassifying people. If this room was filled with bureaucrats that never got elected but is making policy, we would all be held accountable differently now. And that's an important step. These are all little things that you don't see the media talking about. And why is this so important? Because our constitutional republic, our electoral college, our three branches of government, all of these things are in jeopardy. You think I'm joking? Let's listen to somebody, again, from the past. Those of us who are much older remember when Khrushchev made comments. We also remember when Obama made his comments on fundamentally changing America. You can now clearly see they are still pushing very hard and are close to succeeding. The results of the election on November 3rd will tell us whether or not Khrushchev was right. Amazingly, how much things have changed. Unfortunately, people don't see it, or they don't want to see it. Khrushchev's message 61 years ago, he said, "We, communism, will bury you." A quick read, but a lasting thought. Pretty scary. The Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, said, "We cannot expect Americans to jump from capitalism to communism, but we can assist their elected leaders in giving Americans small doses of socialism until they suddenly awake to find they have communism." His complete message 61 years ago was, here's the entire quote, a sobering reminder, almost exactly 61 years ago since Russia's Khrushchev delivered his "Do You Remember" September 29th, 1959. This was the quote. "Your children's children," and if I had a Russian accent, I'd give it to you right now, but I don't. "Your children's children will live under communism. You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we will keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you will finally wake up and find you already have communism. We will not have to fight you. We will so weaken your economy until you will fall like overripe fruit into our hands. The democracy will cease to exist when you take away from those who are willing to work and give it to those who would not." How much does that sound like the democratic socialist agenda of today's elections? Doesn't it sound like that's where we're headed? If you listened to the debate last night, two of the biggest things was what Joe Biden would call a public option, and nobody under Obamacare lost their coverage. Yeah, there was about 4.7 million people that lost their coverage. And we need to transition. That's such a nice way to say it. We need to transition from fossil fuels. What was he not saying? What phrase was he not using? Green New Deal. That's what it's called today. I appreciate the fact that you allow me to share my thoughts with you. And it's not that I'm afraid of. I have no idea if everybody in this room has a worldview such as mine. I do appreciate you allowing me to speak and share my worldview. I'm not saying I'm 100% accurate on all the things I just shared with you. I do believe I have facts as the basis for what I have shared with you. And so, thank you. Let's get some lunch. I see Mindy's here now, so that's good for us. And we are not meeting next week. November 6th will be the next meeting. So please, make a point of making it again. And what's November 6th? It's the Friday after the election. Something tells me that we will not have a decision by then, because regardless of the vote, and I know 46 million Americans have already cast their votes. Well, the early indications are that Biden holds a substantial lead in every state. A couple of my predictions. I do believe that there's been a great deal of voter fraud through mail-in votes already committed. I think there's more evidence every single day. I think we'll have more evidence later. I do think that the combination of early voting, we used to say it about Chicago, early and often, and it was a joke, but it's true. It's true in Boston. It's true in Democratic strongholds to keep the power. I think that a number of votes have already been sent in. I also think that a number of votes will magically appear. Whatever's needed in these states. Minnesota, it's unbelievably close in Minnesota. Can you believe that? A Democratic state for all these years, it's unbelievably close in Minnesota. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida. Georgia could go either way as well. Obviously, one of the largest cities in our nation in Atlanta. But if you look at the counties, across America, so much red, and in the city centers, a little bit of blue. One of my last thoughts is this. How does the UAW continue to support, I go by these union halls, the UAW union halls, Biden-Harris. The two things that Biden has stood for all these years, NAFTA and an open border. Actually, Biden was against the border 20 years ago because at that point, he was on the side of fighting for the middle class wage earner. Now he's calling it xenophobic, and you know the 525 parents that they can't find of those kids that are being well taken care of at the border. They weren't brought over by their parents. And if they were, let's put these people up for adoption until you can find their parents, who may or may not be dead. These kids were being human trafficked at the border, and they were caught, and no one will stand up and tell the truth. Donald Trump tries to. I'm not saying I'm a great public speaker. I seldom repeat myself. Donald Trump has a problem doing that. I don't think Donald Trump's a great public speaker. He just because he cannot convey his thought process efficiently in a short period of time doesn't mean his policies are not spot on for America. We have to remember that. What I've tried to do over the last few weeks is to give each person willing to spend time with me factual information to be able to have critical thinking conversations with the people in my family and in your family, closest people to me, some of the closest people to me. Think Donald Trump is a POS, and they can't explain to me why they want to vote for Biden. It's just somebody other than Trump. That's not a very good reason. Everything I've just mentioned to you, we are on the precipice of falling into and eliminating the constitutional republic, which has been the greatest country ever created, known to man. Remember this, our country was established the first time ever, of the people, by the people, for the people. It was considered a social experiment. The elite couldn't believe it. These people are actually electing their own people to lead them from a legislative standpoint, to set the rules. This was the first time ever. No one has ever even come close to duplicating our system. And we have these other pseudo-free countries, but not to the extent that America was created. And what have we let happen over the years because we're so comfortable? And I've told you before, I've apologized to my kids at the dinner table for not being in the street and protesting. When our president, Obama, is going around to every single country doing the world tour and apologizing for America. It was the apology tour for the first couple of years. And when I see these things, I just got to say this too because they come to my mind. When I see these things about Trump and all the times he's played golf while he's a president, Donald Trump has not played golf nearly as much as Barack Obama did in the first term. I can assure you of that. And Donald Trump has been right in front of the camera on a regular basis. There was a 7 to 8 month period that Barack Obama would not take questions from the media. Do you guys remember that? They actually mentioned it a few times. But this is two separate playbooks. If you're a Democrat and you're about taking control, taking liberties away from Americans, you get handled a certain way by the press. If you're a patriot, if you love the constitutional republic that we were created, and you're trying to get back to some of that, a free market capitalist economy, which has eliminated more poverty than any other system, and the United States of America has been the engine for that globally. And what have we done? Because of a legitimate respiratory pathogen created by the Chinese Communist Party and distributed throughout the world, we've shut down the world's economy in one form or another. And who have we killed? We have killed the most vulnerable among us, not the old people. No offense, Tom, Harold, you guys are our oldest. But unless you have 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot on a banana peel, this thing ain't going to kill you either. And if you think that mentally, you've got a better chance of beating it. I can't decide when you're going to die or what's going to kill you. God's already made that decision. However, we shouldn't live in fear, and I don't think either one of you want all of us to live in fear, killing people. Our suicides, our drug addictions, and our alcohol, our child abuse because the schools are closed, all of these things has increased exponentially, and across the globe, more people have been put into poverty. Now all of a sudden, the WHO and the CD says, whoa, hold on. Poverty kills, and we're killing more people on the fringe in our societies than at a rate we haven't seen in years. That's what I'm talking about. You can shift that and you fall off into an abyss. It can happen with our country too. It can happen between what we would want to have, free market capitalism, or socialism, which the end goal is always communism. I know I'm passionate. I do believe everything I just shared with you, I have facts to base my worldview. I appreciate you giving me that time to be able to share things. I'm hoping that we all convince a person that's closest to us. You know what? We don't like his personality. He's not a great public speaker, but the man cares about America, and he's been willing to disrupt his entire life fighting for what I believe is the forgotten men and women in this country, and that's middle-class America. Because everybody says they're fighting for middle-class America. This is the first guy that has made campaign statements and has followed through with almost every one of them. And if it wasn't for obstruction, he would have done all of that and even more. We give him 4 more years. I really believe we will get even greater. So thank you for your time. Let's see if I can post this. Let's see if it'll go through. So I'm hoping it does. And I'm hoping each of you, I'll send it to you, and I hope each of you will share it with other people. Thanks, guys.